There is a hard truth most people never face, and because they never face it, they never escape it. The life they are living is not entirely the life they consciously chose. It is the life they were conditioned to accept. Their fears feel personal, but many were inherited. Their limitations feel rational, but many were planted. Their patterns feel natural, but many were repeated so often in the earliest years of life that they became invisible. And what is invisible is rarely challenged. What is rarely challenged eventually becomes identity. That identity becomes behavior. That behavior becomes results. And then the results are mistaken for reality. This is why a man can want success and still sabotage himself the moment success gets close. This is why a woman can deeply desire love and still choose the same emotional pain in different forms. This is why people promise themselves a new life every January, every birthday, every crisis, every Sunday night, and still end up circling the same habits, the same doubts, the same disappointments, and the same private shame. They think their problem is discipline. They think their problem is motivation. They think their problem is time, money, stress, other people, bad luck, or some missing piece of knowledge. But the real problem is often deeper than all of that. The real problem is that they are trying to build a new life with an old blueprint. And that blueprint was formed long before they knew they were building anything. Before you ever set your first goal, your mind was already learning what to expect from life. Before you ever tried to earn money, your mind was already learning what money meant. Before you ever entered your first serious relationship, your mind was already learning what love required. Before you ever stood in front of an opportunity and decided whether to step forward or retreat, your mind was already learning whether being seen was safe, whether being bold was dangerous, whether asking for more was selfish, whether rest was allowed, whether your voice mattered, whether your needs were welcome, whether your feelings were acceptable, whether failure meant learning or humiliation, whether success brought freedom or pressure. These lessons were not taught in a classroom. They were absorbed through repetition, tone, emotion, tension, approval, criticism, silence, example, and atmosphere. That is how the subconscious mind learns. It does not wait for a formal lecture. It studies the emotional climate. It studies patterns. It studies what gets rewarded, what gets punished, what gets ignored, and what gets feared. It draws conclusions before you have language to explain them. Then those conclusions settle beneath awareness and begin running your life like hidden law. That is the part that should disturb you, because if hidden law is governing your choices, then your conscious desires are not enough by themselves. You can want more and still remain loyal to less. You can pray for peace and still recreate chaos. You can speak about abundance and still act from scarcity. You can say you are ready and still delay. You can claim you want freedom and still protect the identity that keeps you trapped. You can call your patterns just who I am, when in truth they are often just what was repeated to you until you became familiar with them. And familiarity is one of the most dangerous forces in human life. People imagine that they move toward what is good for them. Often they do not. Often they move toward what is familiar, even when it is hurting them. A person raised in emotional instability can feel strangely uncomfortable in healthy love, because healthy love does not match the nervous system they developed in chaos. A person raised around financial fear can feel anxiety when money begins to grow, because increase feels less familiar than worry. A person raised to earn affection through performance can feel useless when resting and uneasy when loved without proving anything. A person raised to avoid conflict can confuse silence with peace and people-pleasing with goodness. In each case, the life they say they want and the life they are conditioned to trust are not the same thing. That internal contradiction is the silent war inside millions of people. It is why they feel divided. It is why they make decisions and then betray them. It is why they move forward and then retreat. It is why they start with intensity and end with excuses. One part of them wants change. Another part has been programmed to survive by staying within the limits of what it already knows. And when survival programming clashes with conscious ambition, survival programming usually wins. This is not because you are weak. This is because you are trained. You did not wake up one day and decide to fear rejection. You learned it. You did not wake up one day and decide to doubt yourself before taking action. You learned it. You did not wake up one day and choose to believe that money disappears, that success changes people, that love has to be earned, that your truth is too much, that you should ask for less, want less, need less, expect less. You learned those things. Some were spoken directly. Others were demonstrated indirectly. Some came through words. Others came through moods, reactions, facial expressions, shutdown, ridicule, stress, comparison, favoritism, neglect, instability, or the constant emotional message of an environment that taught your nervous system what to expect from the world. The child does not question the world. The child absorbs it. That is where so much of the trouble begins. A child hears repeated statements like, "We can't afford that. Don't get your hopes up. People like us don't have those kinds of opportunities. Stop crying. Don't talk back. Be good. Don't cause problems. You should know better. What's wrong with you?" Or even more subtle messages like affection that appears only after achievement, attention that comes only through caretaking, praise that is inconsistent, or tension that makes self-expression feel dangerous. The child does not analyze these experiences with mature reason. The child adapts. The child makes meaning. The child concludes. And those conclusions become internal commands. Money is stressful. Love is conditional. Safety comes through silence. Approval comes through performance. Conflict means danger. Rest means laziness. Neediness is weakness. Visibility invites attack. My feelings are inconvenient. I must earn my place. I must not burden anyone. I must not fail publicly. I must not disappoint. I must always be strong. I must not ask for too much. I must keep people comfortable. I must stay small to stay safe. Those are not just thoughts. Those become laws. Then, decades later, the adult wonders why they cannot hold boundaries, why they undercharge, why they fear success, why they never speak up, why they chase unavailable people, why they collapse when criticized, why they live in constant anxiety, why they feel like frauds when they finally achieve something, why they sabotage progress with one reckless decision, one emotional spiral, one act of procrastination, one strange retreat back into the same old life. But the subconscious mind is not confused. It is following orders. It is not trying to ruin your life. It is trying to obey what it learned. The subconscious mind is loyal. That is both its power and its danger. Give it a command often enough, and it will defend that command as if your life depends on it. Tell it repeatedly that you are not enough, and it will search for evidence. Tell it repeatedly that money is unstable, and it will behave accordingly. Tell it repeatedly that people leave, and it will misread intimacy as threat. Tell it repeatedly that you always mess things up, and it will guide your attention toward every mistake while ignoring progress. Tell it repeatedly that you are just this way, and it will harden temporary conditioning into permanent identity. That is why the language you use around yourself matters so much. The subconscious does not hear, "I'm such an idiot. I always do this. I'm just bad with money. I'm not disciplined. I'm too emotional. I'm awkward. I can't help it," and treat those as harmless comments. It hears them as instructions. Repeated instructions become accepted instructions. Accepted instructions become identity. Identity becomes behavior. Behavior becomes destiny in slow motion. This is why a person can read all the right books and still remain trapped. Information does not automatically overturn conditioning. Knowledge by itself does not replace identity. You can understand success intellectually and still reject it emotionally. You can know what healthy love looks like and still feel drawn to what hurts you. You can know what habits would change your life and still fail to sustain them. Why? Because knowledge operates at the level of the conscious mind, while conditioning lives deeper. And the deeper layer usually decides how the surface layer behaves under pressure. Pressure reveals programming. Watch a person under stress, and you often see the old script come alive. The one who learned to appease begins people-pleasing again. The one who learned to disappear withdraws. The one who learned to earn love overperforms. The one who learned to expect abandonment becomes clingy or cold. The one who learned that money equals danger makes impulsive decisions. The one who learned that being seen invites criticism suddenly procrastinates on the work that would move them forward. That is not an accident. That is memory without words. That is the old identity defending itself. And this is where the psychological trap becomes especially painful. Many people are unconsciously loyal to the very patterns they claim to hate because those patterns once protected them. The overachiever hates exhaustion, but achievement became safety. The helper hates being used, but helping became belonging. The peacemaker hates swallowing the truth, but peacekeeping became survival. The person who says, "I work best under pressure," may really be recreating familiar chaos because calm feels foreign. The person who claims to just have bad luck in relationships may be choosing emotional dynamics that match an old wound because healthy steadiness feels suspicious. The person who says, "I'm always broke no matter what I do," may still be holding subconscious beliefs that money must leave, must create pressure, or must not be fully trusted. That should force you to stop and think, because if your patterns once protected you, you may still be emotionally invested in them even while they destroy your future. You may say you want peace while clinging to the identity that was formed in chaos. You may say you want wealth while protecting beliefs that equate wealth with guilt, conflict, or responsibility. You may say you want real love while remaining attached to the version of yourself that feels most alive in uncertainty, chasing, proving, and earning. That is why change is not just behavioral. It is emotional. It is psychological. It is spiritual. It is the painful work of withdrawing loyalty from what once helped you survive, but can no longer help you live well. And that work begins with a brutal kind of honesty. You must be willing to ask yourself questions most people avoid for a lifetime. What beliefs am I defending that are producing the very life I complain about? What emotional patterns feel normal to me, even though they wound me? Where do I still confuse familiarity with truth? In what area of life am I calling conditioning my personality? What old role am I still playing? What part of me still believes I have to earn what should be received, fear what should be built, or hide what should be expressed? Without those questions, there is no real freedom. There is only self-improvement theater. There is only surface adjustment. There is only the illusion of change layered over an unchanged core, and the core is what must be addressed. At the center of this hidden system are three things: beliefs, self-image, and identity. Beliefs are the rules you think reality operates by. Self-image is the picture you hold of who you are within that reality. Identity is the role you have accepted and now defend. Together, these three shape nearly everything. If your belief is that success is hard, and your self-image is that you are inconsistent, then your identity may become the person with potential who never quite follows through. You may sound ambitious, but you will keep producing unfinished cycles. If your belief is that love must be earned, and your self-image is that you are not enough as you are, then your identity may become the person who overgives, over-explains, and over-functions to keep people from leaving. If your belief is that rest is laziness, and your self-image is that your worth comes from productivity, then your identity may become the person who feels guilty when still, frantic when behind, and empty when not achieving. Do you see how this works? Once the pattern is named, the life begins to make sense. And once the life makes sense, responsibility becomes unavoidable. Not blame, responsibility. Blame looks backward and stays weak. Responsibility looks forward and starts building. Blame says, "This happened to me, therefore I cannot change." Responsibility says, "This may have happened to me, but it will not be allowed to keep deciding for me." That is the difference between remaining a prisoner of the past and becoming the architect of the future. But to become the architect, you must stop waiting for mood to rescue you. You must stop treating transformation as a feeling. You must stop imagining that one big insight will permanently free you. Freedom is not built that way. It is built through conscious repetition of higher law. This is where autosuggestion becomes powerful. The subconscious accepted commands in childhood without your permission. It can accept new commands in adulthood with your decision. What you repeat with emotion, focus, and consistency begins to form new grooves in the mind. That means your inner speech is not casual. It is creative. It is instructive. It is shaping what your mind expects and permits. If you keep repeating defeat, you will keep rehearsing defeat. If you keep rehearsing defeat, you will keep producing it. So the script must change, not in a shallow, artificial way, but in a disciplined and deliberate one. You must begin issuing new orders. Not "I'm trying," I follow through. Not "I hope things get better," I create better through action. Not "I'm just bad with money," I am becoming wise, steady, and responsible with increase. Not "I always go back," I do not return to what diminishes me. Not "I'm scared to be seen," it is safe for me to be visible, to speak clearly, and to take up my place. Not "I have to earn love," I no longer betray myself for connection. This is not magic, it is training. Repeated self-talk shapes internal expectation. Internal expectation shapes perception and behavior. Behavior shapes results. The mind must hear a new command often enough that it begins to trust a new version of reality. But words alone are not enough. The subconscious also learns through imagery and emotion. If you constantly imagine yourself failing, being rejected, losing everything, freezing up, falling behind, being exposed, disappointing people, or proving your worst fears true, then you are rehearsing the very reality you claim to fear. You are feeding the old law. Therefore, the imagination must be put to work intentionally. See yourself as the person you are building. See yourself acting differently when the old trigger arises. See yourself pausing instead of reacting. See yourself keeping the promise you made. See yourself completing the task. See yourself handling money calmly. See yourself setting a boundary without apologizing for your existence. See yourself receiving praise without shrieking. See yourself being loved without performing. See yourself succeeding without immediately preparing for disaster. See yourself resting without guilt. See yourself speaking with clarity. See yourself moving forward while uncertainty is still present. See yourself becoming someone your old conditioning did not predict. These images matter. The subconscious responds to repeated mental rehearsal. What is imagined vividly and often begins to feel less foreign, and what feels less foreign becomes easier to embody. Then comes action. Without action, even the best mental work stays incomplete. Action is what turns suggestion into evidence. Each time you do what the old version of you would not have done, you lay down proof. Each time you keep your word to yourself, you weaken the identity of self-betrayal. Each time you choose the healthy pattern over the familiar wound, you weaken the old emotional addiction. Each time you tolerate the discomfort of growth instead of running back to the comfort of limitation, you teach your nervous system a new standard of safety. This is why small wins are not small. They are identity evidence. One finished task matters. One honest conversation matters. One wise money decision matters. One day of not abandoning yourself matters. One moment of moving before you feel ready matters. One refusal to re-enter a pattern that has stolen years from you matters. These are not tiny things. These are votes for a new self, and identity is built by accumulated votes. Not one grand performance, not one emotional breakthrough, accumulated votes. That is why the person who changes their life is usually not the one who felt the most inspired. It is the one who kept voting for the new identity after the inspiration faded. It is the one who kept showing up while the old self argued, complained, doubted, and resisted. It is the one who kept taking the next right step while discomfort was still present. Because discomfort does not mean the path is wrong. Often it means the old conditioning is losing power. This is important because many people turn back at exactly the point where transformation is beginning. The old pattern resists. The body feels uneasy. The mind grows loud. The excuses become persuasive. The old identity whispers, "This isn't you. This is too much. Go back. Stay safe. Wait. You'll fail. You're not ready. You're changing too much. People won't like this version of you." And because that inner voice sounds familiar, people mistake it for truth. It is not always truth. Sometimes it is the last defense of a dying pattern. Do not confuse resistance with revelation. Do not assume that what feels old is wise and what feels new is dangerous. Sometimes the danger is in staying loyal to what is familiar. Sometimes the real threat is the life you will still be living 5 years from now if you keep obeying the same internal commands. Think about that seriously. What happens if nothing changes? What happens if you keep calling your conditioning who I am? What happens if you keep letting inherited beliefs set the ceiling on your money, your relationships, your work, your honesty, your confidence, your peace? What happens if you keep telling the same story long enough that it becomes your permanent reality? What happens if you keep protecting the wound, and never build the life. That future exists. Many people are living it right now. They are older, more tired, more cynical, more defended, more rehearsed in disappointment, more attached to their explanations, and farther from their true life than they were 10 years before. They did not get there all at once. They got there by repeating what was familiar and calling it realism. You must refuse that fate. You must become more loyal to truth than to familiarity, more loyal to growth than to comfort, more loyal to what your life could become than to the identity you formed in pain. That requires decision, and decision is not emotion. Decision is a line. Decision is an order. Decision is the moment you stop negotiating with your old programming and begin issuing new commands from a higher standard. This is where power returns, not when every fear is gone, not when every question is answered, not when childhood is fully explained. Power returns when you stop agreeing with the lie that you are fixed, the lie that your conditioning is your character, the lie that your earliest training must remain your final truth, the lie that because something entered early, it must rule forever, the lie that your emotional reflexes are destiny, the lie that your patterns are permanent, the lie that you cannot become someone your childhood never prepared you to be. You can, but you must participate. No one can do the internal work for you. No book can force you. No video can rescue you. No burst of inspiration can finish what only disciplined self-leadership can sustain. You must take responsibility for what your mind is being fed. You must take responsibility for the inner speech you allow. You must take responsibility for whether you keep rehearsing the old life or begin constructing a new one. And yes, there will be grief in that process. Grief for the years lost. Grief for what was believed. Grief for the version of you that survived by shrinking, proving, pleasing, hiding, hustling, or numbing. But do not stop there. Let grief become clarity. Let clarity become decision. Let decision become practice. Let practice become identity. Let identity become the foundation of a different future. Then one day, almost quietly, you begin noticing evidence. You are no longer reacting the old way. You do not collapse so quickly. You do not chase so desperately. You do not spend so recklessly. You do not apologize for existing. You do not abandon your standards to keep temporary comfort. You do not delay the task for 3 more days. You do not speak to yourself like an enemy. You do not interpret every silence as rejection. You do not confuse exhaustion with worth. You do not need the old drama to feel alive. That is not small. That is the beginning of freedom. And freedom begins inside before it appears outside. The outer life follows the inner law. Change the law, and the results begin to change. Maybe not in one dramatic moment, but in a lawful series of shifts that become unmistakable over time. More self-trust, more consistency, better decisions, cleaner boundaries, healthier relationships, greater peace, stronger financial behavior, deeper self-respect, clearer work, less noise, less self-betrayal, more alignment, more power. That is what becomes possible when you stop living under inherited law and begin governing yourself consciously. So hear this clearly. The life you are living may not be the life you chose with a fully free mind. It may be the life you were programmed to accept. It may be the product of early repetition, emotional conditioning, inherited fear, and identities formed before you knew what they would cost. It may be the outworking of conclusions you made as a child and never re-examined as an adult. And that should disturb you, not to paralyze you, to wake you. Because once you see it, the question is no longer whether the programming exists. The question becomes whether you will keep obeying it. Will you keep calling old fear wisdom? Will you keep dressing limitation up as realism? Will you keep using your past to explain the future you refuse to build? Will you keep protecting patterns that were useful in survival but deadly in adulthood? Will you keep repeating the same life and pretending you are waiting for the right moment to change? Or will you decide that the old script ends here? That is the question, and your answer will shape everything. The lie ends when you stop agreeing with it. The lie ends when you stop reinforcing it with your words, your imagination, your choices, your excuses, and your identity. The lie ends when you stop calling your conditioning my personality and start calling it what it is, old programming that no longer deserves authority over your life. The lie ends when you begin living by higher commands, repeated with enough conviction and action that the subconscious begins to obey them. Then the future changes, not by accident, not by luck, by law. And here is the line you should remember long after this message is over. The life you are living is not necessarily the life you chose. It may be the life you are programmed to accept. If that does not disturb you, you are not paying attention. But if it does disturb you, good. Disturbance is often the beginning of awakening. Awakening is the beginning of responsibility. Responsibility is the beginning of power. And power, rightly directed, is the beginning of a completely different life. Now the question is simple. Will you keep living the script, or will you rewrite it?